with Senator Vincent Hughes, who currently represents the 7th Senatorial District in Montgomery and Philadelphia counties. He also served in the House, representing the 190th District from 1987 to 1994. Okay, so we'll get started by doing some background questions. If you could just describe your childhood, your early life, your education, and so forth.
Wow, describe my childhood and early life. I started out as a child, right? Okay, and everything was downhill since then. So born and raised in West Philadelphia. If my wife allows me, I'll die in West Philadelphia. But she may not allow me that privilege. So grade school, some college. I'm still matriculating, college student, trying to get it all done because life and work and everything just takes over. But it's so if your question is going to be how did I get started in politics, which
Sure.
I'm probably sure it's going to be, I have the funny story, funny but true story, is that I was elected president of my first grade class at the H.C. Lee School, 47th and Spruce Streets, and re-elected president second grade, re-elected president in third grade, and re-elected president in fourth grade. Clearly a dynasty was in the making. And then sadly in fifth grade, my girlfriend ran against me.
Uh-oh.
Yes, this is true. This is an absolutely true story. My girlfriend ran against me, and she beat me in the election by one vote. All the girls voted for her, and all the guys voted for me, except this one guy. And this is for our archival purpose, so this is going to stand for the rest of history. So I'm going to put his name in the archive. Stanley Cousins voted for my girlfriend, and I lost the election. And needless to say, that was the end of our relationship. She started going out with a sixth grader, and my teacher felt bad for me, so he just appointed me the treasurer. We had no money, but he appointed me the treasurer. He just, that's what teachers do. That's why we love teachers, because they just see into your soul, and they see that this kid, me, needed a little encouragement. So he said, well, look, you just be the treasurer. No money, but you're the treasurer. So yeah, that's the comical but true story. Her name was Iris Hines. I still remember, and in fact, I'm still in touch with her. She's doing well. Teacher, Cheney University graduate, teacher down in North Carolina, doing extremely well, and I'm very happy to maintain that friendship over these years. But that's how I got started in politics.
Was your family interested in politics? Were they active in the community or in Philadelphia?
Family was I'm not going to say that my parents were overtly involved in running and being involved in campaigns and things of that nature, but they knew the community. They knew folks who were involved in making a difference. They were connected with individuals. My father, for many years, worked at that time, the oldest African-American owned savings and loan in the country, Berean. He worked at another financial institution before that. And in his work, he was involved in giving out and providing mortgages and financial assistance, and especially mortgages in the African-American community were extremely hard to come by. And so, because of the issue of redlining, which unfortunately is still with us to this day. So he knew a lot of folks, all right? And they knew him. And my mother came from a very large family in South Philadelphia. And she worked for the Philadelphia School District for 33 years. And so she knew lots of individuals also. Mom is a great story. at the recording of this conversation, Mom is still alive. Now, I'm not allowed to say her age because she
Okay.
can get very upset with me. All right?
All right.
But she's been around a very long time. All right?
Okay.
She has far surpassed the life expectancy of her demographic. She is.
Good for her.
I can't say her age
Yeah.
because I love my mother. All right? I don't want her to be mad at me.
Mm-hmm.
And she's still driving. She's still functioning. She's still just being a tremendous contributor to our family and to the community. But she also knew the community as well. And when she retired, I have to say this about Mom. When she retired from the Philadelphia School District, we went to the retirement meeting with her. And they opened up her file and said, Mrs. Hughes, we see that you have 330 unused personal days and 260 unused sick days. He said, Mrs. Hughes, you basically never missed a day of work in your life for the school district for 33 years. And, in true South Philadelphia spirit, South Philadelphia way, she said, that's right. You have a job, you go to work.
Mm-hmm.
What's so complicated about that?
Yeah.
That's mine.
Good for her.
Yeah.
Okay. So then what made you decide to run for the House district that you served?
I'll never forget it. I worked for, or I was involved in the AFSCME union, American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees Union, District Council 47. I was involved in the Political Action Committee, which back in those days, 1982, 1980, 82, 83, 84, the Political Action Committee was very much a volunteer operation. And I did a lot of behind-the-scenes work in campaigns and organizing field activities and things of that nature, even raising a few dollars. And they asked me, they said, look, we need you to work. And this is obviously on your off time, your non-work time. They asked me to work on the campaign of a young man who was running at that time for state representative in 1982. His name was Shaka Fattah. And I said, absolutely, be glad to do it. And I remember going to the first campaign meeting for him. And I walked in the room and there was just a room full of young people, high school students, college students, young professionals, what have you. I think the oldest person in the room may have been 30, 31, 32, maybe 35 years of age. But everyone else was young. And I was like, wow, this is good stuff. All these young people around here. I like this feeling. I like this vibe. And, we all were having fun, doing a lot of good work, knocking on doors, going around the community, helping to win election, and we won his election. And then soon after his swearing in, he said to me, he said, you ever think about running for public office? You ever think about running for state representative? I said, no. He said, well, you might want to think about that. And so I thought about it, and I said, okay. I did some exploration. I did some research. I found out who it was that represented the legislative district that I resided in. And didn't feel that they were doing much. Didn't feel they were doing a good job. And so it was that brainchild, that moment, right, that at that time was, okay, run. Don't be afraid of it. Don't fear it. It's important, but you should not be afraid. And as the case with most young people, we're not afraid. We step out there, which is the case for most young people. Most of the great transformations of our time have occurred as a result of the drive and determination of younger people. And so I did. And in 1984, I ran for state representative in the 190th district against, at that time, a 16-year Democratic incumbent, and I ran in a primary, which was a big challenge, something very new at that time. And I lost. I lost by, I think, out of about 11,000 votes that were cast, I lost by 900 votes. And the funny thing was, I'll never forget this scene. So election day was April 10th, and April 11th, you find out what the story is, and April. So I didn't do much on April 11th. On April 12th, I went to the campaign office and met with my folks, and I got all suit and tied up, and like now, right? Okay, and they said, "What are you all dressed up for?" Okay, you lost. Okay, and I said, "Wow," and I'll never forget that moment for a couple reasons. First of all, it represents the suddenness of how elections work. You rush to a moment, campaign to a moment, there's election day, and then all that energy, all that excitement right after is gone. Mm-hmm. It evaporates immediately. Okay. I'll never forget that. And the other thing I won't forget is sort of like an Our Gang moment. And you're too young to remember Our Gang, okay? But sort of like an Alfalfa and Spanky moment. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, I lost. Well, let's pretend that we won. Mm-hmm. Let's just pretend that we won. We're going to run again in 2 years, right? This was me. Now, I hadn't confirmed with my campaign apparatus that we were definitely going to run again in 2 years, but this was me. Well, let's just pretend that we won. And then we'll just go out and serving people and helping people and continue to knock on doors and continue to, do our thing. And that's what we did. We did everything except actually come to Harrisburg and vote on legislation and get a paycheck. Mm-hmm. Okay? All right? Yeah.
Great.
Let's pretend we won.
That's a good quote.
It's true. I'll never forget that moment. Mm.
So the 190th district was your House district, and now you represent the 7th Senatorial District. Could you explain the makeup of both of those districts? What makes it unique? Any issues that your constituents had back then or now?
So the 190th district is at that time. Mm-hmm. So that would have been in the late 80s and into the early 90s. State legislative district, embedded deeply in the West Philadelphia community. Areas like West Park and Walnut Hill and Belmont and Mill Creek and a little bit of Parkside and neighborhoods like that. Very, very deeply embedded. The Bottom, which is a community in the 190th district, and places like that, places that have historically, unfortunately, been very hard to really transform the outcome and the circumstances of the people because of the very deep poverty that exists and has existed in that community and communities similarly situated across the state and across the nation. And so, but all really, really wonderful people who had this commonality of just wanting to make their neighborhood and make their community a little bit better. Guys like Sarge, Charlie Wingfield, who was head of the Mill Creek Association, and he's an old Marine, right? Ex-Marine, heavyset guy, real gruff and tumble. Always around. Mr. Wingfield always had a blunt cigar, stogie, about half smoked, always in his mouth. Always, and I think we all know guys like this, mm-hmm. just rough and tumble, But the thing that I remember about Mr. Wingfield, when we were able to have one of these quiet moments and quiet conversations, and he would say, Vince, I just want to make this place better. I just want to do whatever it is I can to make this place better. And a little tear came to his eye. And I'll never forget that moment, that behind all of this rough, tough character and who this guy portrayed himself to lots of people, he's really a sweetheart, you know, just like a gentle giant, just a gentle soul. But the outward appearance was rough and tumble. Elsie Wise, who is another person. She ran a great community organization over at West Powelton. She would hold everybody's feet to the fire. All of the big shots would come by and, well, we want to do this in the community. We want to do that in the community. And but she was, again, rough and tumble on one side, but she was a real sweetheart. She loved me. She liked me. Oh, Vincent, you're wonderful. You're great. You're just doing just. You're going to be great. And I'll never forget my first election. And, the 6th Ward, the 1st Division, she was also a committee person, 6th Ward, 1st Division. And when we were getting the results that night in 1984, and everything by then was mostly by hand, right? Mm-hmm. Everything by then was mostly by hand. We get the election returns that night, and we know we're going to do great in Miss Wise's division. We know, because she said she loved us, and she said you were fantastic and you're the best in the whole world and all of this. And she beat us terrible with my opponent. She beat me. Oh my goodness. I think it was like 140 for the opponent and like 40 for me in her division, just in her division, mm-hmm. Right? And we're like, Miss Wise, what happened? And she, oh, you're wonderful. I love you. I didn't say I was going to support you, but I like you. I think you're a nice young man. But we became fast friends after that. There's all kinds of names that I can mention. Madeline, Ella Dunn, and Miss Campbell, and just so many wonderful, wonderful salt of the earth people who these are the communities that these are the people who really make these communities go.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so being in the House and the Senate, and maybe these answers are different based on time and lapse of time, do you think that people of color have to work harder to be elected to the House, or even to have successful legislation in the House and Senate? If you could just explain your thoughts on that issue.
Wow, so it's a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of different things, and let me explain. When I first came to the House of Representatives, I had the pleasure for 1 year of serving with probably Pennsylvania's greatest legislator, K. Leroy Irvis, the first African American to ever hold the position of Speaker for any General Assembly in the country. K. Leroy Irvis, a giant of a man, a true Renaissance man, intellectual, one of the last orators of the House of Representatives, one of the greats, who could literally change a vote based on his floor speeches. Mm-hmm. And so there's a difference between an orator and a speechmaker. Okay, an orator changes people's minds. Yes. A speechmaker talks a lot. Mm-hmm. Okay, right. So Mr. Irvis was an orator. All right, he could change a vote. Served with him as a speaker and tried to pick up as much wisdom as I could in that one term, that 87, 88 period. And I wish I could have had more time with him. I wish I could have sat with him longer to get a better feel and really learn from him. But I served with him, and so understanding his brilliance, and understanding the kind of change that he made across the legislative landscape, that gave me a sense of the possibility. It gave me a sense of the possible, what could be achieved, what could be done. You can, if you stick with this, you can really get somewhere. But you have to understand, you have to stick with it, all right? You have to be focused. And of course, as an African-American legislator, it's even more difficult. And normally it's more difficult because of issues of race. Mm-hmm. That's real, all right? Your colleagues, the people who interact with the legislature, they look at you and too many times in too many circumstances view you differently with not the level of respect that you deserve, that everyone else would get. More difficult because usually the communities that we hail from have very intractable issues, and so they require a lot of time dealing with that one-on-one daily constituent service kind of pieces, as opposed to dealing with budgets and changing policies, which is what your responsibility is as a legislator. Your responsibility as a legislator is to deal with the budget, to shape the budget, to deal with the issues of the people of your district and the people of the entire state, to pass laws or to influence laws or to prevent laws from happening. That is, you are a lawmaker. So your function is to make laws. That's your responsibility, to make laws. But the problem is when you can't spend so much time on that you lose connect with the day-to-day reality of what's happening with your constituents. And quite frankly, in communities that African-American legislators hail from, a lot of those communities that are in extremely terrible conditions, require lots of time, lots of attention, from the person who's been fired from their job to the person who's being evicted from their home unfairly to all kinds of other economic crisis, discrimination, what have you, requires, and unfortunately the level of income challenges, poverty, things like that, require extra time, extra attention. And that takes away from your ability to deal with the mega changes, the changes in law and changes in budget that need to be done. And all of us need to come out, black and white, or black, brown, yellow, white, what have you, need to understand that being in the legislature is a long play. It's not a short. It is not a short experience. You have to put the time in, and you definitely have to put the work in. All of us have to understand that when we get into this and organize ourselves accordingly. But on the issue of challenges as an African American legislator specifically, oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Even in the position that I'm in right now, mm-hmm. we still get the issue of respect. You can still see in folks' eyes when they come to my office and sit down and want to talk to me that they really don't want to do that. They really don't want to come and sit. They really don't want to come and talk. Mm-hmm. But you have to. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, come on in. Yep. Yeah. I know you don't want to be here, but come on. Mm-hmm. Let's talk.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. So your relationship with your predecessors in the House and Senate, did you learn a lot of the political process from them? Did they provide insight once you got into your current role and your role in the House? Or if you could share any stories about any of these members?
Some did.
Okay.
Some did. But this is you're on your own, fella. Okay? Mm-hmm. You're here. We'll give you a couple weeks. We'll show you where the bathroom is. We'll show you how to work a few things and how to get your papers filed and how to, write your legislation and that kind of thing. But mm-hmm. after a while, you're on your own. Okay? But we had great experiences, great great friendships. I mentioned Shaka, who still to this day is a lifelong friend. Gordon Linton, Representative Gordon Linton, who still remains a lifelong friend, and who moved. And again, this shows that you can achieve. And we for African American legislators, this issue of representation is real, because when you can see it, then you can know that it's achievable. Gordon Linton left the legislature, left the House of Representatives, and became the transit administrator in the Clinton administration. Mm-hmm. So he moved from a state rep position in Northwest Philadelphia, all the way up to essentially the White House, and worked as the transit administrator for the Clinton administration. He traveled all over the country, working on transportation issues. And Gordon was an individual who basically showed you that if you put the grind in, you put the work in, you make thoughtful decisions. It's not always about the flashy speech or anything like that. It's about putting that good work in, that it will be recognized. For African American legislators, it takes longer, mm-hmm. right? But it will be recognized if you put the work in and choose not to give up. Stay relentless, stay persistent. David Richardson, my very, very dear friend, who had a national footprint, an international footprint, in terms of African American legislators all across the country, and giants in the progressive movement all across the country. A freedom fighter, I mean, you know, he and I would talk about, and again, remember in those days, we talked about Nelson Mandela. We talked about the plight of the issues in South Africa. We talked about divestiture issues and things of that nature. We talked about always making sure the community is first. We talked about making sure that the African American community never gets neglected, mm-hmm. In this process of legislating and budgeting. It's folks like that, Roxanne Jones, whose incredible story. Now that was when I was in the Senate, mm-hmm. But Roxanne Jones, the first African American female senator in Pennsylvania, a true giant. She became a bud when I moved to the Senate, a friend. There's all kinds of names of colleagues who I think about. Far too many of them obviously have made transition, but there's a few that are still around. But yeah.
You mentioned Gordon Linton. We talk on the phone, him and I, sometimes. He is such a wealth of knowledge, and he's been my hearing piece when I have ideas, and he tells me if they're gonna go or not. And he's been great helping our office. His brain is still functioning. Absolutely. If he's not doing spin class, he's calling or doing research. But
that's Gordon.
There's actually a picture I'd like to show you and get your thoughts on. This is the Black Caucus, right before you were elected, I think. It was around 83, 84. Yeah. So a lot of iconic members in this photo.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Does this spark any memories or
absolutely
any thoughts that come to mind you'd like to share?
Absolutely. Alfonso Deal, standing right behind Frank Oliver, right next to Ruth Harper. Alfonso Deal, another giant. Alfonso Deal, before he came to Harrisburg as a state representative, was a Philadelphia police officer, and he was also head of the NAACP in Philadelphia. He had huge battles with the Fraternal Order of Police, with the FOP in Philadelphia, because of their discriminatory treatment in the African American community. Bad officers, not all, but bad officers. And he had huge battles that were known all across the country, because he took, as my mother would say, he would take no tea for the fever. He was very confrontational about doing right and wrong and issues around justice. Absolutely. He's a good memory. There's, of course, Mr. Irvis sitting in the middle. Go around the room. There's Gordon Linton and Shaka. Of course, Dave Richardson, Hardy Williams. Okay, up top there, I'm pointing, so please forgive me.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
Because you can't see me.
I know what you're. I know you're looking at.
Hardy Williams is standing between Andrew Karn and Jim Barber. That's the guy who I beat on the far end, the heavyset gentleman. That's the guy who I beat. Mm-hmm. All right. Hardy Williams was a trailblazer as well. So many firsts in his life. In his life, he was friends with my dad. His district was adjacent to what would become my senatorial district. And so the communities in West Philadelphia were adjacent to one another. True inspiration, of course. David, Frank Oliver, Dwight Evans, who moved to become the chairman of the House, the majority chairman of the Appropriations Committee in the House of Representatives. Another point of guidance, of some inspiration, because he moved to the position, a senior level position, a position of great responsibility, and again showed all of us that this could be achieved, that you can get this done. I mentioned Shaka, who became an expert in education issues, became an expert, especially in higher education issues. In many respects, when he left the House, went to the Senate, continued that work in the Senate, then went to Congress, became, in the annals of the U.S. House of Representatives, when the conversation comes to who's had a great impact on higher education, if they tell the story honestly, if they tell the story truthfully, his name should be mentioned. If they tell it honestly and truthfully. Mm-hmm. Frank Oliver, sitting between Representative Richardson and Speaker Irvis. I mean, he was just a gentleman, but you never wanted to cross Frank Oliver because he had a memory very, very long. And he served so long in the legislature that it became a question of, well, Representative Oliver, you could make more money in retirement than you're making here, mm-hmm. Just on your personal salary. But he loved the job and he loved the work, and he chaired the state government committee, if I remember correctly. So all election law went through him. So, absolutely lots of memories. Ruth Harper, Representative Harper. Oh, mm-hmm. Yeah. She ran the charm school. Did you know that?
I did.
She ran the charm school.
Yeah.
The Ruth Harper Charm School. Yep. And she had the sinking homes. She in her district was a huge tract of land, huge plot of land. I want to say 10,000 sinking homes, and it was built over, I think it was an old landfill, and the landfill was not sturdy. Mm-hmm. And many of the residents there were having problems, and eventually they had to clear they had to bulldoze all of that land, because it would have been a multi-billion-dollar program to transform that. Yep. Ruth Harper.
Yeah.
Ruth Harper's Charm School.
All right. I will take that off. There we go. So moving then into the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus, what was your involvement when you started in the House and even into your current Senate tenure?
Well, obviously was a member of the Black Caucus, mm-hmm. chaired the Black Caucus from, I think, 1991 to 1994, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think I have that down here.
tried to do some groundbreaking things at that time. We convened the alternative budget, the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus alternative budget, for what the governor put out to make sure that our priorities, the priorities, obviously for African American constituents across Pennsylvania, and for all constituents, but especially for African American constituents across Pennsylvania, were being addressed, were being heard. The Legislative Black Caucus had never done that. We got that idea from the Congressional Black Caucus in Washington, D.C., and they used to produce an annual alternative budget to address their priorities. So we just took that platform and we moved it down to the legislature. We convened one of the first gathering of Black elected officials from all across Pennsylvania. I think there were probably about 100 or so Black elected officials that showed up at a 3-day conference that we convened in one of the hotels by the airport in Philadelphia, by Philadelphia International Airport. And so those were good days. It was hard working days. It was a learning experience for me. Let me backtrack. All of the days are hard working days. It was a learning experience having that leadership responsibility at that time, because as much as you had your own ideas, you wanted to make sure that you were taking into consideration everyone else's viewpoint. And the ability to coalesce folks, which you on issues that you would normally think would be automatic, but not always automatic. And issues in southeastern Pennsylvania versus issues in western Pennsylvania or other portions of the state, not always the same. Not always the same. Understood that African American individuals across Pennsylvania who may not have had a Black legislator or a Black senator representing them thought in their mind that they had nowhere else to go, so they would come to the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus. And it would be our responsibility to give them an ear, to listen to them, to advocate for them and try to move their issue, because they came to us invariably because they felt that they could not get an ear with their own elected official. And that's kind of one of the unspoken responsibilities of the Legislative Black Caucus. You add that, you add the responsibilities of having to go out into communities where, Pennsylvania unfortunately still remains a state where the Klan organizes, and there's a lot of white supremacist activity. Well, from the legislative level, that's one of the things that the Legislative Black Caucus has a responsibility to do. When they see these kinds of things happening, they have the responsibility to call folks to the carpet and go out and confront this kind of stuff. I do remember, unfortunately, on far too many occasions, having to have that responsibility to go out and confront these things in neighborhoods and communities that, would not necessarily be receptive. But when you deal with hate, you got to confront hate. You can't just let it sit, because it'll fester, it'll grow. I remember having to do that. Remember having to work with the the Human Relations Commission, which at one point was ranked one of the top human relations commissions in the nation. I think at that time, I want to say there were about 22 or 25 states that had a human relations commission, sort of mimicking or mimicking what exists at the federal level. States established those. And for a while there, under the leadership of Homer Smith, the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission was rated one of the best in the nation. Remember working closely with Homer and the Human Relations Commission. So lots of memories, all of them good, mm-hmm. all of them good. A lot of them filled with struggle, mm-hmm. but all of them good, absolutely.
Okay. So moving towards the end of our interview, how would you like your tenure to be remembered in the House and in the Senate, which might not come for many, many years, but how would you like it to be remembered?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's so hard to say. The the House of Representatives, just by definition, is rough and tumble. The personalities make it fun on a lot of days. Sometimes make it. I've seen fisticuffs break out on the floor of the House of Representatives. I literally, okay.
I believe you.
The old rules on the House of Representatives, the old rules when I was there, created certain environments which were not necessarily the best for making legislation. Right? The leaders used to keep you up late at night to 1 and 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, keep you on the floor, go back to your office, we're in recess, and they would wear you down on legislative matters. And then you'd have to vote for something on 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Budgets and legislation and things like that. You had to. That's the old days. That's how they would do you. Okay. And so the experience that we have right now is very, very different. The personalities are wonderful. You get a chance to meet all kinds of individuals from all parts of a very diverse state, very rural, very urban, and it's just, I have fond memories of those kind of personalities, of meeting those individuals. Obviously, moving to the Senate, it's a different environment. 4-year terms gives you a chance to breathe a little bit and really sink your teeth into legislative issues and try to move stuff forward. And what I find out, everybody returns a senator's phone call. Everybody returns when you say Senator so-and-so and such, you're going to get that call returned. I don't care where you are in the world. Mm-hmm. In the world, everybody returns a senator's phone call. And I really like that idea. Okay? I really like that idea. But the hurt of all of it is, although we've gotten a number of very good things done, too much pain that is consistent, that is in existence now, that was the reality when I first started. Mm-hmm. Too many issues that divide communities are still in place now than when we first started. And that is painful. That is hurtful. But at the same time, as a good reverend would say, you got to keep hope alive. Mm-hmm. When I started out as a legislator, my first campaign, 1984, was the first race for president by Reverend Jesse Jackson. And I was a supporter, involved in his campaign, supported him again in 1988. They weren't successful, but they advanced an agenda, got a lot of people involved in the political process, and it was good. Painful, the losses were painful. We always wanted more progress. But you know what? 20 years later, after 1988, a young man by the name of Barack Obama was elected president of the United States of America. Less than 50 years after the passage and the signing of the Voting Rights Act, we were able to achieve that. And that is a very significant thing, and it's a part of the reason why you keep going. Mm-hmm. We do this work to try to, for example, get, one of our agenda items is increasing opportunities for young people to go to college, especially bridging the gap and bridging the divide for African American children to attend college. And then when you get a success and then one reaches back to you and says, hey, Senator, just want to let you know I'm finishing grad school and I'm applying to Harvard and Yale, and oh, by the way, I'm headed off to Oxford, all right? Or by the way, I've established myself in another state, and I just want to let you know that it was being close to you and being in your network and your just the help that you provided when I was a young person, believing in me, that has put me in this position right now. Those are just a small example of some of the victories that we've had, and that's what keeps you going. That's what keeps me going. Mm-hmm. Okay, that no matter what your circumstance is, that you can touch somebody's life and make an impact on someone's life, and you may not see it right in front of you. Okay, you may not touch it. We were big champions for the implementation of the Affordable Care Act here in Pennsylvania. Big champions for that, and it didn't happen under the previous governor, but our voice and our work in that space caused him to lose that election, and then for us to put somebody in place, Tom Wolf, who implemented the Affordable Care Act to its fullest in his first 3 months in office. We were part of that work, part of the foundation of that work that created that opportunity, and it was successful. And so those are wins, okay? Those are wins. When we last increased the minimum wage in Pennsylvania, I remember sitting at the bill signing. That was a big thing for me personally. We sit at the bill signing at Sharon Baptist Church on a Sunday morning. I think it was July 9th. Myself, then Governor Ed Rendell, and then Senator Tina Tartaglione. And it may have been the most impactful thing, and definitely at that time, that I've ever done as a state legislator, as a state senator at that time, raising the minimum wage, because you immediately, when that happened, you immediately put hundreds of dollars in folks' pockets and billions of dollars in the state economy all across Pennsylvania, and did something to help move folks out of poverty. And you never know how that's going to touch somebody years down the line. Mm-hmm. But you stick with it. No matter how difficult, no matter how difficult the circumstance, even as an African-American legislator, you stick with it. You don't let it go. You stick with it. And you can make a difference. Yeah, it is racism, no doubt. It's got to get called out every time. Every time. It's got to get called out. Notice must be served in each and every situation, in each and every circumstance. But you got to be focused as well. You got to understand that this is not, this work that we're doing is not just about giving out food baskets and things like that. Although that's important. That's important, right? What this work is about is changing the law so that people don't need food baskets, and budgeting and driving the state budget so that you can empower people to have the economic capacity within their own self, their family, and their community, so they won't need a food basket, or to provide the resources so that the programs that do the work of giving out food baskets are fully funded and have the resources necessary. This is about changing laws, all right, and changing budgets to meet the needs of the people. And it's also about the fundamentals of democracy, because it's based and rooted in the right to vote. It's based and rooted in the right to vote. And when all people have that opportunity, when it's not abridged, when it's not torn asunder, when all people have that opportunity to vote, everybody wins. Reverend Jackson always reminds us, and he is a huge point of reference for me. He always reminds us, when when black people vote, not just black people win, but when black people vote, women win. Mm-hmm. And when women vote and women win, children win. And when black folks win and women win and children win, then families win and communities win, and we can make real change. But it's rooted in that right to vote. When you snatch that right to vote away, especially from the African American people in this country, which is rooted in this denial of the right to vote, when you empower that, it's not just the black community that wins. All communities benefit. All communities. And that is a salient thing that I want to make sure that I communicate in this conversation. That this means something. This democracy means something. And we gotta caress it, we have to embrace it, and we have to lift it up. Because there's a lot of people out here who want to tear it asunder. And we cannot allow that to happen. Cannot allow that to happen.
Well, that was my last question, unless there's anything else you'd like to discuss on the topic or any last minute memories. Okay, well then, thank you so much for participating today.
Thank you.